Hi guys, welcome back to Ask Amy. We took a week off for the holiday in the US last week, so it's been a couple weeks, but I'm happy to be back and I have a great question for you today. I'm coming to you live from my kitchen. My life has changed dramatically since our last Ask Amy. Both of my kids are in school all day, which is crazy, and because my kids are gone, my husband's out keeping himself busy. So I get to come down to my kitchen and leave the office and venture out in my own home. It's very exciting. So today's question is a really good one that I know a lot of people are going to be able to relate to about anger and resentment. And it's from Michelle. So she says, and I might shorten this a tiny bit. She says, I have a lot of anger toward my mother, and I see it coming out all the time. The anger is because my mother doesn't talk about my father, who died when I was a baby, and on the few occasions she has, it's been in negative terms. It's clear she holds a grudge with him for dying, and she said as much to me when I was younger. In one of the few times we've talked about him, she implied that he cheated on her, that he ruined her life by dying because he was supposed to take care of her, and that she didn't really know him well. Everyone else talks about him like he was a saint, which seems too much to the other extreme, obviously. This has left a huge gap in my life because I don't know him at all, and it's very clear no one will ever tell me the real deal about him. I resent my mom for not allowing the subject to be discussed throughout my life, and regardless of how much I try to push this aside, I'm not sure how to let this go or what I should do. It's a huge block in our relationship. We get along now better than before, but in my mind, we'll never be close, and I resent her martyr complex. I resent the fact that she has more or less refused to tell me anything about him because of her own selfishness and anger. Anyway, I feel like I can let a lot of things go, but not this one. Any thoughts? So first, what I want to say to you, Michelle, is I do have some thoughts, and I'll share them, but I just want to say, it's tough when it's us. So what I'm going to say, just be patient with yourself and other people who listen to this. There's a great chance they might kind of hear something in what I'm pointing to maybe sooner or more easily than you will, because it's literally very close to home. when it's our anger and our mother or our person in our life and all that resentment, there's so much thinking, so many memories. It just gets so jumbled up and lost in it. So what I'm going to share absolutely speaks to this and can and will and has helped many, many people start to see resentment and anger in a really different way and let it just flow away like it's kind of meant to do. But be patient, because it's kind of tough when it's close to home like that. So in reading your question, Michelle, I thought about an article I wrote called How to Never Feel Resentment Again. And I thought that article was about 2 years old. Turns out, I look back, it's about 5 years old. So that's how time goes. But I wrote that article almost 5 years ago after I read the book, The Relationship Handbook by George Pransky, because he talks about resentment in that book in a way that I had never heard before, that is so obvious in a way, but it really kind of blew my mind at the time. So what George says is that resentment comes from thinking about ourselves. So when we're focusing on how someone's behavior affected us and the gaps that are in our life because of their behavior and what they should have done so that we can have a better life, and all the things we all do, the ways we look at how someone behaves and we make it about us right away, not intentionally, not even consciously, but we feel hurt by what they did. That's where this resentment comes from. Now, that really kind of makes sense, right? It's like, you should be different. You should have done this. You should have been talking about my father and telling me the truth, and you should have been stronger, and all of those things that your mind's been telling you for a really, really long time, and how her actions have hurt you. And so when we look at it that way and that feels really real and true to us and just obvious, like, of course you're wrong. Of course you shouldn't have done that. Of course, that's going to cause bad effects for me. Of course that your behavior is going to hurt me. We kind of innocently set it up in a way that we can't help but feel resentment. Like that, yeah. If you think someone hurt you, you can point to the hurt and their actions caused it. Of course you're going to feel anger and resentment. So, and again, this is just such a human thing. Like it's just the way it's looked to you, and it's just the way it's felt. So it's not that it's wrong or that you shouldn't feel resentment or anything, but it's just kind of saying, okay, so the way that you've been seeing this is she caused all these problems for you and she should have been different. The natural consequence of that is resentment, right? So I want to give you a couple kind of different ways of just things to consider. Let's put it that way, things to consider. So seeing a little bit about how the human experience works, where our experience of life comes from, we start to see that people can't create feelings in us. Our feelings only come from our own moment-to-moment thinking. Now, that does not mean that was awesome parenting. That does not mean that it would have been great if you could have grown up having this nice open, communication about your dad. It doesn't mean any of that. And just in a bigger sense, it doesn't mean people don't do hurtful things, that people don't do things that aren't, in our best interest or that aren't great or whatever. Like, of course we do. We all make mistakes. It's just for you to see moving forward from this point on that we can only feel our own moment-to-moment thinking. And so if you're thinking, Michelle, is in this place just habitually, not on purpose, of she was wrong and now I resent her and this has been going on for 20 years or 30 years or whatever, and there's this gap, as you said, there's a gap there because I don't know my dad and I don't know anything about him. And I just want you to start to kind of consider the fact that where all that feeling of gap and missing out and lack and all of that is coming from is that story, that moment to moment should have been different. She should have done whatever you think she should have done. Every human being I've ever met in my life is caught up in those kinds of stories, but it's so nice to see so we just live in feeling of that thinking. And when it looks that way to us, we're going to feel whatever we feel. So there is no actual gap, but that's not to invalidate your experience. You clearly can have this experience of something missing and it's not fair and all of that, but it's just to see for you in this situation and for everyone, that can only come from within us because that's just the way it works. Someone else in your exact same situation would have a different experience, maybe far more resentment, maybe less, anything's up for grabs because we just feel our own thinking. So the more we see, okay, other people can do things happen in life, things we don't like all the time, but they can't make us feel anything. Imagine that. I mean, suddenly we can't be victims. Resentment doesn't even make sense in the same way because they aren't harming us. They're doing things that we might not like, but that they aren't creating gaps in our lives. They aren't really in a big way hurting us. Like, we feel our thinking. They're doing things and we're feeling our moment to moment thinking. So feeling powerless and feeling like a victim and feeling like other people have hurt us and feeling scared in the world and all of that starts to kind of fall by the wayside the more we see that we can only feel what's coming from within us. The other thing that George said in the Relationship Handbook about resentment is that the flip side of resentment, the opposite of resentment, is compassion. Now, again, Michelle, I get it, okay? Like, I'm not saying, oh, just feel compassion for your mom, but here's the thing. Again, when our mind is so focused on what they've done and how they've hurt us, it's going to be really, really hard sometimes to feel that. And it might be really hard for you, and that's okay. That doesn't mean it won't happen. It's just sometimes it's tough. We're up against a lot of thinking that looks really real. But the more, again, we can see what's really behind the human experience. Like, how do we work? Just like you're feeling your own thinking, your mom's feeling her own thinking too, always has been. So we don't do things, people do those unkind things I mentioned, circumstances happen, people do things that are bad parenting or just, not kind to other people, for sure. But they don't do that because they're bad people. We don't do that when we do them, because we all do them, because we're bad people. We do things out of our own hurt and our own insecurity and our own fear. So again, easy because it's not my mom. But when I read about what you wrote, that she feels, she's always said that he, was supposed to take care of her, and she's mad at him for dying and all of this, like, we can all see that's not logical, and that's not a mom that has nothing to do with you, Michelle. That's your mom coming from insecurity and her own fear and her own stuff, and probably really wanting to take care of you and thinking, oh, great, now I'm doing this all by myself, and all kinds of stuff. Really, really human, natural, okay stuff that is not really who your mom is. It's not who she is. It's just the insecurity and the fear and the natural scary stuff she was feeling. And from that place, she's done what she could see to do. So we can only see from the thinking that's going on at any given time. And if she's been holding on to this shouldn't have happened, her own version of kind of what you're going through too, her own version of it though, that shouldn't have happened, he shouldn't have died, and all of this stuff, well, she can only see life in the way that her thinking dictates too. So she's always done, as much as we can say it wasn't great and wasn't helpful and wasn't kind, she's done what's made sense to her moment to moment as well. And that's where we start to have some room for compassion. Now, again, don't try to push this, and don't try to look at your mom and like suddenly forgive, a lifetime of stuff, but just sit with this and let it happen naturally, because you aren't designed to hold on to resentment. That takes effort. It takes mental churning and getting caught up in thinking to hold on to anger, to hold on to resentment, and to keep playing that out. So you can change. This can reverse far quicker than you might think it can. So you want to just kind of sit with these ideas, consider like, I wonder if there's a way of seeing this woman and seeing, even though we can never truly walk in someone else's shoes, when we see how the human experience works, we kind of start to see that, okay, we're all just doing the best we can from the wonky thinking we have in that moment. And she's had some wonky thinking, and so have we all. And we've done things that we aren't proud of, but we kind of see how this works, and there's like a looseness around it, there's a looseness, and it at least opens the door for some compassion, opens the door for understanding. You are having your door open to seeing that, okay, this gap and this anger and all of this that I feel, that's my own mind creating that moment to moment. And the whole thing can kind of just start to loosen a little bit. And as we see, that we're all the same. We all have the same operating system. We work in the exact same way. And I've just seen miracles happen, and really, really big shifts in relationships. And again, watch this several times. Don't push it. Be patient with yourself. But just right now, get curious, I think, about some of the things that we've talked about here and how it plays out in your life, and see what shows up for you. So I really hope this has been helpful for you, Michelle. I hope it's helpful for a lot of people, because it's a very common situation. And if you want to see more about having better relationships, letting go of anger and resentment in your own life, join us in the Little School of Big Change. Go over to littleschoolofbigchange.com, get on the wait list. We're opening up again for enrollment next month. It's coming up soon. I'm cooking up all kinds of cool change stories and fun things to share as we get ready to open the doors again. So I'd love to see you there. And if you have a question you want me to address here, please send it to AskAmy at littleschoolofbigchange.com. And I will see you back here next Monday, maybe from my kitchen, maybe back in the office. I don't know. And I hope you have a great week. See you then.